Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, panel, for an excellent discussion. And Ambassador Burns, thank you for your distinguished service to the country in so many ways and your wise counsel. And thank you for promoting us to the best hope of fixing this problem. But I think we're the second best, frankly, that I share your concern that the President really has to take the lead here for obvious reasons. Commander-in-Chief, chief diplomat, the most recognizable public figure. There was a missed opportunity at the NATO conference. Forget what was said. What wasn't said was the common threat we face today, the most significant one, not the only one, is this deliberate action by the Russians. And my sense is that the most immediate game changer would be if the President, standing next to the Chancellor and to the President of France and to the British Prime Minister, took that position. I assume you have an opinion on that.
Well, I do. I was ambassador to NATO, as you know, Senator, and every American president has been the leader of that alliance, has affirmed that bedrock commitment, and we know it was in the President's speech and it came out. And so it had a devastating impact on American leadership. And what we haven't talked about today is that in addition to the intelligence and judicial and political measures to take to defend against the interference in our elections, you and Chairman McCain lead another committee. We have to keep funding the rebuilding of the U.S. military in Europe. I hope permanently station the NATO battalions in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, because we're into containment of Russian power. We're back into containment on multiple levels, and this hearing exposes one of those levels.
In that spirit, though, not only the reaffirmation of Article 5, but also a positive statement about the common threat of cyber against the United States. We've missed one opportunity, but if the President could stand with the leadership of NATO and the Prime Minister of Canada and many other interested parties and make that declaration, that would do as much to start this process as anything. Is that fair?
Well, it would, because the immediate threat now is this threat. It's the cyber attacks on the electoral processes. It's a much bigger threat than a conventional threat. He has the opportunity. He'll be in Germany the week after next. He'll be at a summit hosted by Chancellor Merkel. There are opportunities for the President to get back into this leadership role and to try to build some bridges with the European leaders. My sense is that Secretary Tillerson and Secretary Mattis want us to go in that direction. They've been talking publicly about trying to play a bigger leadership role, a more concerted one.
Well, thank you. Mr. Sarts, we have had discussions about the vulnerabilities of our electoral system, our information, social media, all of these things. We know, as several people have suggested, that they're coming back. From your perspective, what are the Russians working on, already working on, in our case, the 16 campaign and the 18 campaign in the United States? Are they going to deploy more sophisticated cyber operations against our registration and electoral systems? There's been some reports in Great Britain in the context of the Brexit vote that there was an attack on registration systems. And I guess the biggest question of all is, are they already there and we don't know it because of the ability to use some tools that have fallen into their hands? So if you could.
One thing that we've registered, Russians do experimentation. Sometimes you see an odd pattern that is inconsequential in a given circumstances, and you kind of dismiss it because it has no effect. But when you look forward, or retrospectively, when you've seen these cases, you see that has been the test case for a particular tool. So they're doing it right now. It's not necessarily that they test it in the theater they're going to deploy it. It might be a very different place. So yes, there will be more elaborate tools, both from a technical but also from a cognitive perspective. I would expect there'll be more. But I think the choices whether to do and how to do that would be made pretty close within the contextual circumstances of a moment.
Now, your Center for Strategic Communication, are you actually dealing with this issue of, in Germany, for example, the upcoming election, trying to help them in the United States, trying to give advice? Is NATO taking the position, with, we hope, U.S. leadership, of proactively dealing with this, or are you caught up in this kind of paralysis that we see in the United States?
Well, NATO is facing now this from a very different, well, not very, but a slightly different angle, where the NATO is putting troops in the three Baltics and Poland. They are bombarded with disinformation, with fake news. Robotic networks are trying to attack. So NATO is taking different trends of response, capability built up, practical steps, et cetera, et cetera. We, as a center, we are not part of a military structure. We are run by the countries that made our center, so we respond to them. And if they ask, and they do, to give our advice, knowledge, or methodology, how they can counter specific cases, including election, we are there to support them.
Thank you very much. My time expired. Thank you all very much.